It seems like every day the Labour Party continues to dig itself further and further into the ground. It seems that everything has gone downhill since Keir Starmer replaced Jeremy Corbyn as party leader. Blatant transphobia and Zionism, unwavering support for NATO, using a Holocaust museum as a political prop, Angela Rayner wanting police to shoot first, ask questions later, removing autonomy from the party's youth wing, punishing shadow cabinet members that attend picket lines and West Streeting, generally being West Streeting. Bracing fully the Blairite days, it would seem that the fleeting chance of a return to socialist principles embodied by Corbyn's term are lost to Starmer's Labour. Two choices are set out before the left now. Stick with Labour and try to steer it back to Corbynism, or abandon the party, forging a new opposition to the Tories, be they blue or be they red. Today, however, we're going to look into what the Labour left, the Corbynites, the Entryists, Momentum, etc., seeks to reclaim. We're going to look over the history of the Labour Party, from its origins to its founding, its government, its time in opposition, to Blair, to Corbyn, to Starmer, to answer two questions. Has the Labour Party ever been a socialist party, and if not, what is it? Join me today as we look through a history of revisionism, betrayal, bloodshed and opportunism. A history of meagre reforms outclassed by a barrage of death at home and abroad. A mangling of the socialist method towards a narrow, treacherous social democracy. A history of a few fledgling heroes with a fair share of villains. A history that stands not for the many, but for the few. A people's history of the Labour Party. To understand the Labour Party, we must first understand its origins in the late 19th century. Long before Labour was the official opposition against the Conservatives, it was the Liberal Party that, for lack of a better phrase, stood against the Conservatives. Stood against some air quotes there. Around this period, about the time of Marx's death and near the end of Engels' life, the trend of new unionism in England, of more radical, more aggressive trade union action, came to a close. Simultaneous to this was a contrasting trend, the trend of liberalism. As the 1884 Representation of the People Act came to pass, more of the masses were gaining suffrage, giving rise to the practice of socialist and trade unionist entryism into the Liberal Party. Dubbed liberalism, this practice didn't see much success, but the focus on electoralism above all else is an important element that was grown here. In the attempts of the Lib Labs to get elected, they appealed not to the values of socialism, but instead to more national values such as religion. For instance, the campaign literature of one of the Lib Labs included not only talk of socialism, but instead a commendation from a church leader, saying, "We have reason devoutly to thank God that our leader of undisciplined labour is a man like Tillett, a good soldier of Jesus Christ, and not a Marat." Marat? I don't know how it's pronounced. At this point, the Labour Party doesn't exist, nor do the precursors to the Labour Party exist. However, the abandonment of socialist talking points in favour of talking about religion would be an important stepping stone towards the creation of a party focused on electoralism above socialism. We'll come back to that in just a moment. For now, we must turn our attention to 1893, with the formation of the Independent Labour Party, an organisation really only able to reliably get former Lib Lab turned party leader Keir Hardie elected. This new organisation, which would soon wither away and be functionally replaced by the Labour Representation Committee, LRC, took much of their ideas from the Liberal Party and the Fabian Society, a think tank of sorts that had at this point only one working class member, a house painter. Its key figures, such as Sidney and Beatrice Webbs, as well as playwright Bernard Shaw, were self-admitted members of the ruling class. Then it was very much correct in saying that Labour is bourgeois-led. It's been as much from the beginning, and the attitudes of these Fabian thought leaders were reflected in their ideology. The Fabians referred to the working class as having deficient minds, called liberal reforms that gave health insurance to workers wholly bad, and spoke of the colossal stupidity of the trade union rank and file. Bernard Shaw also echoed the sentiments of Malthusianism, saying, "Socialist policy, so far from favouring the weak, favours the strong. It is a process of conscious social selection by which the industrial residuum is naturally sifted and made manageable for some kind of restorative, disciplinary, or maybe surgical treatment. In this way, it not only favours the growth of the fittest within the group, but the fittest group in the world competition of societies." Fabian ideas could not even approach the truth of socialism, the ideology whose thinkers were committed to destroying and debunking the rotten ideas of eugenics. So what did the ILP and later the LRC take from the Fabians? Well, the Fabians echoed the same social democratic idea of not challenging institutions such as religion, patriotism, the monarchy, the lords, etc. Not only did putting religion before socialism continue, but they also echoed the patriotic sentiments of modern Labour, such as them saying, "We're Britain's first, socialist second." Shaw also said that their Fabian programme didn't contain words such as socialism or revolution, as they were un-English. They certainly believed that the state and the law were impartial elements rather than the chief arms of bourgeois dictatorship. Furthermore, their core ideas are summed up by key ILP founder Robert Blatchford, saying, "Nearly all law is more or less socialistic, for nearly all law implies the right of the state to control individuals for the benefit of a nation. The abolition of toll bars and bridge tolls was socialistic action, for it made the roads and bridges common property." That's right, according to the Fabians, socialism is when government does stuff. Never heard that one before. This is all very in fitting with what would become the Kautskyist line of meeting the proletariat halfway and socialism via a majority in parliament. This single-minded drive towards winning elections rather than building a socialist society, according to any theory, not only infested Labour rhetoric with religion, patriotism and, as we'll see later, monarchism, but also the smoothing over of class conflict. To quote early Labour MP Philip Snowden, the Labour Party is not seeking any class triumph. Its object is not to make the manual labour class dominant. It is quite true that the Labour and Socialist Party makes its appeal to the wage-earning classes. It does that because there are people who need to be aroused to a fuller sense of civic duty. As they are the vast majority of the electorate, they must exercise their political influence. The term class war was omitted from the party programme and, as established before, the party was bourgeois-led. All these elements make a case for the Labour Party being born not from socialism, but from bourgeois socialism, a concept wherein members of the ruling class want to improve the conditions of the working class without upsetting any element of the capitalist system. A part of the bourgeoisie is desirous of redressing social grievances in order to secure the continued existence of bourgeois society. To this section belong economists, philanthropists, humanitarians, improvers of the condition of the working class, organisers of charity, members of societies for the prevention of cruelty to animals, temperance fanatics, hole and corner reformers of every imaginable kind. This form of socialism has, moreover, been worked out into complete systems. The socialistic bourgeois want all the advantages of modern social conditions without the struggles and dangers necessarily resulting therefrom. They desire the existing state of society minus its revolutionary and disintegrating elements. They wish for a bourgeoisie without a proletariat. This is compounded by the literature tastes of the first Labour MPs. A survey of which books most inspired Labour MPs as sat in the 1906 and 1910 Parliament, and only 2 MPs of the 40 mentioned Marx or Engels, whilst 25 mentioned the Bible, fitting with the aforementioned veneration of religion before socialism. Twice as referenced as Marx or Engels were the works of Charles Dickens. I find this particularly interesting because Dickens' work certainly fits into the attitudes of improvers of the condition of the working class, organisers of charity, etc., with works such as A Christmas Carol that speak not to any great structural change, but encouraging those with wealth to be nice to those without, lest they be left in loneliness and an afterlife of torment. These concepts, charity, threats of damnation, and a lack of structural change, are similarly key to, and indeed born from, the Bible. In the words of Helder Camara, when I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist. In 1906, the LRC formally became the Labour Party, a party that had so far demonstrated itself as a thoroughly social chauvinist party that towed the liberal line, played to bourgeois hegemony, and was inspired more by bourgeois socialism than socialism. A party that derived its thought from a liberal party and a think tank who were themselves more inspired by Malthus than Marx. To create a separate, independent party was a great step. Yes, developing an independent party of workers is a very important step in developing proletarian power. However, this early party was a far cry from the Leninist vanguard. Rather than an apparatus to educate the masses, its leaders were bereft of theory beyond socialism is when no toll bars on bridges. Rather than a central body to lead revolt, the party were fiercely anti-revolutionist and hoped for strike action to fail so more workers could be ferried into parliamentarism.